All right, let's get right into it. We have all been there, right? You're pushing through that last set, that final sprint, and your muscles just give out. It feels like you've slammed into a wall. Well, today, we're going to break down exactly what that wall is made of, all the way down at the cellular level. This is the real science behind peripheral muscle fatigue.
I mean, it's a crazy question when you think about it. Your mind is screaming, one more rep, you can do this. But your body just says, nope, we're done here. This isn't about willpower. No, there are very real physical things happening that force our muscles to hit their limit. So what is actually going on in there?
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by figuring out exactly where the problem is. Then we'll follow the signal from your nerve all the way to your muscle to see where the chain breaks. After that, we'll dive into a chemical crisis, see how some gunk literally gums up the gears, and then we'll wrap it all up.
Okay, first things first. We've got to understand that not all fatigue is the same. That feeling of being tired is super complex. So to really understand it, scientists have split it into two main types, which helps us pinpoint where the failure is actually happening.
So, on one side, you have what's called central fatigue. You can think of this as your brain and spinal cord deciding to hit the brakes, maybe to protect you. But on the other side, and this is what we're focusing on today, is peripheral fatigue. This is when the issue isn't the command from your brain, it's the muscle itself that's just not able to follow orders anymore.
So here's the bottom line. Peripheral fatigue is a local problem. It's happening right there on site. The order to contract makes it all the way to the muscle. But the muscle, because of all these changes happening inside its own fibers, simply can't generate the kind of force it could just a few moments before.
You know, you can think of a muscle contraction like a perfect chain of command. A signal starts at the top, it gets passed down the line, and then you get an action at the end. Well, fatigue is what happens when one or more of those links in the chain starts to buckle under pressure.
Okay, so here's how it's supposed to work. A signal zips down a motor nerve. It has to jump across a tiny gap. That's the neuromuscular junction, where nerve meets muscle. And that triggers an electrical wave along the muscle fiber, and boom, you get a contraction. Sounds pretty simple, right? But during really intense exercise, every single one of those steps is a potential point of failure.
And this is basically our map of everything that can go wrong. First, you've got the switch, that connection between the nerve and muscle. Then you have the wiring, which is the system that carries the electrical signal through the muscle. After that, the activator, which involves calcium, can start to fail. And finally, the engine itself, the part that actually does the pulling, can break down. Let's start with that switch in the wiring.
So, the very first weak link can be that switch. To get the muscle to fire, your nerve releases a chemical messenger called acetylcholine. When you're firing that nerve over and over and over again really fast, it can actually start to struggle to keep up. It releases less and less of that chemical messenger, so the go signal gets weaker before it even gets inside the muscle.
And next up is the wiring. For that electrical signal to travel properly down the muscle fiber, you need this perfect balance of ions, especially potassium, inside and outside the cell. But intense exercise completely messes with this balance. Potassium starts to build up on the outside, and that puts a damper on the electrical signal. It's kind of like trying to start your car with a dying battery. The spark just isn't as strong.
Okay, so let's say the electrical signal manages to get through that faulty switch and the compromised wiring. Now we're facing another huge problem, even deeper inside the muscle cell. And this is what I like to call the calcium crisis.
See, calcium is basically the ultimate on switch for a muscle contraction. That electrical signal we talked about, its job is to trigger the release of calcium from a little storage tank inside the muscle. But during fatigue, two things go wrong. First, less calcium gets released, and second, the system that's supposed to clean it back up for the next contraction gets slow and sloppy.
And the consequence of that is pretty straightforward. If calcium is the key that unlocks the muscle's engine, then fatigue is like the key not quite fitting in the lock anymore. You can turn it, but you're not fully engaging the engine. The result? A much, much weaker muscle pull.
So the signal is weaker, the on switch is failing, but that's not all. As your muscles burn through fuel, the actual chemistry inside the cell starts to work against you. You get all this metabolic waste that literally starts to gum up the gears.
So let's meet the three main culprits. When your muscle uses its primary energy molecule, ATP, it leaves behind these scraps, ADP, inorganic phosphate, and hydrogen ions. Normally, these get cleared out pretty quick, but when you're working really hard, they build up way faster than your body can clean them up.
And this really gets to the heart of the energy problem. Your muscle just can't remake that ATP fuel as fast as it's burning it. As you can see here, your energy levels don't drop to zero, but they can fall off a cliff pretty fast, leaving you with less fuel and a whole lot more of those annoying byproducts we just mentioned.
So how does this gunk actually cause problems? Well, that inorganic phosphate, pi, directly interferes with the muscle's engine, making each individual pole weaker. And those hydrogen ions, they make the cell more acidic, which messes with key enzymes and makes the muscle less sensitive to the calcium that's available. It's a total double whammy.
All right, let's pull back from the microscope. We've seen failures in the signal, the calcium switch, the chemical soup. So what does all of this tiny chaos actually feel like in the real world, when you're in the gym or out on the track?
Well, the end result is something every single one of us has felt. Your muscles produce less force, period. They also contract more slowly. And when you combine those two things, less force and less speed, your overall power output absolutely plummets. And that's why you suddenly can't lift the weight or run as fast.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? This is the definition we started with, but now we know exactly why it happens. It's not one thing, it's a whole cascade of failures happening right inside the muscle that prevents it from doing its job.
But here's the good news. Our bodies are incredible at recovery. The second you stop, the cleanup crew gets to work. Those metabolic byproducts get cleared out, your energy stores get refilled, the ion balance goes back to normal, and slowly but surely your muscle is ready to go again.
And that leaves us with one final big thought. Now that we understand exactly where and why our muscles fail, from the electrical wiring to the chemical gunk inside, it raises a fascinating question. Can we use this knowledge to train smarter, to actually target these weak links and push that wall of fatigue just a little bit further back?